the General Coordinator of the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa.
My name is Bridget Mugambe. I work with the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa as a Programs Coordinator. I also facilitate the Climate Change and Agroecology Working Group of AFSA.
I am Christine Kaya Nachimoero, a woman member of Parliament for Chiboga District in the Central Region of Uganda.
My name is Fatunde Ige, and I am the lead coordinator of the African Group of Negotiators on Gender and Climate Change.
My name is Olumide Idowu. I'm from Nigeria and I'm the Executive Coordinator of African Youth Initiative on Climate Change.
My name is Karen Nekesa. I work for an organization called Regional Schools and Colleges Permaculture Program as the Advocacy and Communication Coordinator.
AFSA works on issues related to agriculture. Over 50% of our people, in some countries it's more than 80% of our people depend on agriculture.
AFSA has, for the last 4 years, been running a campaign to integrate agroecology into climate policies at the national, regional, and global levels. We've engaged with policymakers at the national level, at the regional level, at the global level. And for us, now these scope processes are very critical because it's where the decisions are being made to integrate agroecology or not to integrate it. So we felt that bringing together almost 200 Africans to create a voice for agroecology is very critical for us to be able to amplify our agenda at the COP27. So that's why we organize this summit. Okay.
And through our research and through the research that is done by others, finally we have, I think 5-6 years ago, we have decided that it's agroecology. So agroecology should be part of any of the strategies that African governments should follow.
Based on our situations in the different countries, we have a big number of smallholder farmers. We can no longer run away from small holdings as far as agriculture is concerned. So when we are talking about developing or building resilience for our farmers, owing to the fact that agriculture is the biggest employer of our countries, we cannot forget smallholder farmers because they are the ones running that sector. And so they have their own ways of doing things. And in climate change adaptation, we are saying that we must come up with practices that these smallholder farmers can as well take on, such that they are resilient. They continue to produce food that can sustain their households. In case balance appears, then they can go for the markets. Running away from small-scale farming at the moment in most African countries is wrong.
AFSA's concept note is to involve the indigenous people or the grassroots people, depending on which community they are coming from. And this is in relation to climate change that I have already mentioned, and that is which includes and not limited to flooding, droughts, displacements, and so many other, we don't want to call it disasters, but climate change crisis, because climate change is calculated for what has been happening for the past 25 years. And for me, in my capacity as the negotiator at the UNFCCC process, I talk in the line of climate change.
If you look at access to food and production, you will notice that at the small scale, all the farmers are one of the contributors of the kind of food we are eating. And going to COP, and the kind of conversation we are talking about is how can we get space for vulnerable people. And I think the conversation on agroecology is to help us to see how we can infuse the conversation of sustainable food rather than talking about climate smart agriculture. So we are looking at that position in COP27 so that all the agenda that is going to be talking about, whether it's in climate finance, whether it's going to be adaptation or mitigation, agroecology should be a front line of kind of conversation, whether you are from the women's sector, whether you are from children and youth, even farmers. So I think ahead of COP or during COP, we should make it as a slogan that agroecology is the way forward. One of our tools is advocacy, and we want to bridge the gap. When we take gap, there's a knowledge gap for young people so that they will understand the concept of agroecology and they will be able to talk about this conversation anywhere they go. And for young people that will be attending COP, we want to also see that there's a pre-conversation on agroecology so that by the time we get to COP, we'll be speaking the same language in promoting a sustainable food system, and agroecology should be one of our slogans. Thank you.
Climate change is no longer, like I said, it's no longer just a crisis. It is an emergency. And we see many vulnerable groups, many smallholder farmers, pastoralists, and even fisher folks facing the impacts of climate change effects. Of course, we are not saying they do not know, they know. It's just to create that collaboration and partnership with the government so that they understand that there's a solution. And we're looking at agroecology as a mitigation approach to climate crisis. In our work with AFSA, we have just observed and noted that our soils have been poisoned. And where we have small model farms practicing agroecology, we see the improvement of the soil. There are microorganisms that are coming up because of use of naturally available resources.
Yeah, agroecology has been proven, by years of practice, by the science. The recent IPCC report shows it. The science has proved that agroecology works for climate adaptation and mitigation. The farmers are practicing it. Agroecology is feeding us. Agroecology is an African agenda. So we feel it is being sidelined, it's being neglected, other approaches are being advanced, and yet the most popular and easier option is not being included in the climate negotiations, it's not being financed, it's not being discussed, it's not even on the discussion paper. Yet the majority of Africans, small-scale farmers, fisher folk, pastoralists, it's what they are practicing. It is what we are using to adapt to climate change. It's what has helped us through pandemics like COVID. So agroecology is a broad approach that we really need to adapt as Africa.
AFSA is not an organization. It's a space. It's a space for everyone, for every African to come and participate in defining an African agenda. That's what we have planned to create, a single and loud African voice, and that's what we are trying to achieve. We still a long way to go, but we are here. We are becoming clearer and clearer in our agenda. So the climate space is one of those agendas. I really beg other networks who are in this member that we are not here to compete in the climate spaces. That's not the agenda of AFSA. As we have said, our purpose is to work for the transition of Africa into agroecology, because we have proved to ourselves that agroecology works for Africa. And we are exploring spaces, policy spaces. One of these policy spaces is the climate space. It's a very critical space. So we are exploring this space for the transition to agroecology. Otherwise, the climate agenda is a very, very big and wide agenda. So we have to work together. We invite every African in this compound, in this hall, to work with us. If you have an agenda, we'll back you, we'll support you. Whatever agenda that you have, we believe in it, of course.